What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Zulu channel. Hope you had a fantastic day. If you're new to the show, my name is Zulu, and today I'm going to show you how to make a wonderful 3-layered, super moist red velvet cake with a beautiful cream cheese frosting made completely from scratch. Let's do this. So, to kickstart this recipe, we're going to sort out the dry ingredients first. So get yourself a medium-sized bowl and a fine sieve, and sift together 295 grams of all-purpose flour, 5 grams of bicarbonate soda, and 20 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. And then once it's been well sifted and there's no lumps, add in 2 grams of salt and whisk it together so that all ingredients get into each other, and that's the dry ingredients sorted, set to one side. Now next, the wet ingredients. Here I've got 300 milliliters of buttermilk. Into that I'm going to add in 120 milliliters of a neutral tasting oil, for instance canola oil, vegetable oil, or even rapeseed oil. 1 to 2 teaspoons of vanilla bean paste or vanilla extract. At the end of the day, it really comes down to preference. And 1 teaspoon of white vinegar, i.e. white wine vinegar, will do perfectly fine for this recipe. And then give it a good whisk together to make sure all ingredients are thoroughly combined. And now it's time to add some red food colouring. When it comes down to food colouring, I don't really listen to measurements, I kind of just do it by eye. Because all food colourings tend to be a bit different, some are stronger than others. So what I like to do is add a little bit, whisk it in, and if it needs a bit more, add more. And simply just continue doing that until you're happy with the colour of it. And then once you're happy, set it on one side. And that's our mise en place sorted. Which, if you're unsure what that means, that's French for everything in its place. And now for this next step, you're going to need a pretty large bowl so you got plenty of room to work with. And you're going to add in 115 grams of unsalted butter. You want to make sure the butter is nice and soft, but it's not melted. And beat together over high speed until it's nice and light and creamy. And once nice and creamy, you're going to start adding 350 grams of caster sugar. The reason I like to add the sugar in gradually is because I find that it incorporates into the butter a lot more evenly. And then once all the sugar has been added, you're going to continue to beat it together until it's nice and pale and creamy. And by the way, don't forget to scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl when you're doing this. You want to make sure everything is getting creamed evenly. And after beating together the butter and the sugar for a while, this is the consistency you're looking for. And now for this next step, you're going to need to add in 2 eggs, but add them one at a time, just so that they incorporate into the mix evenly and they don't separate. So add 1 egg, beat over high speed until well combined, then add in the other egg and beat that in until well combined. And at the end, it should be nice and light and fluffy like this. And halfway through this whole process, I forgot to say, but make sure you scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl, because what you don't want is chunks of butter stuck to the bottom of the bowl and not being incorporated. And now you want to need your wet ingredients and your dry ingredients. First, add a third of the dry ingredients to the batter. Fold that in until literally just combined. Don't overmix it, you don't want to activate too much gluten. Then pour in half the wet ingredients and fold that in until combined too. And you just want to simply continue doing that same sequence until all the ingredients have been used up. So basically, cut long story short, you want to start with the dry ingredients and end with the dry ingredients. You may be thinking, well, why don't you just add all the dry ingredients and wet ingredients all at once? The reason for this is because I don't want to activate too much gluten in the flour, as I'm trying to achieve a really nice, light, soft sponge. If too much gluten in the flour is activated, then it'll be really dense. Does that make any sense? I really hope so, because I don't know how to explain that any better. And now, before we go to the next step, in my opinion, I don't think this batter is red enough for a red velvet cake. So I'm just going to add a little bit more red food colouring just to make it a little bit more of a reddy colour. And once that's mixed in, that's it, that's the batter finished. And now you're just going to set the batter to one side for a sec while we prepare the cake tins. You're going to need 3 7-inch cake tins, and you're going to first lightly grease them all over with some unsalted butter, then place a circular cutout of non-stick parchment paper into the base of each tin, just so that they don't stick. And finally, lightly dust them with some flour and towel off the excess. You can substitute the flour with cocoa powder if you wish. And then equally divide your batter between your 3 tins. Try your best to get as equal as possible so that they bake nice and evenly. Then smooth off the surface using an offset spatula and preheat the oven to 175 degrees Celsius. Bake for approximately 28 to 33 minutes, or until a skewer inserted into the center of the cake comes out clean. And then remove from the oven and place on a wire rack. Leave them in the tins for 5 minutes to firm, and then carefully flip them over to mold them. Remove the parchment paper from the bottom and leave the sponge to cool down fully at room temperature upside down. That's going to create for a much more even surface when it comes to layering this cake up. And now whilst the cakes are cooling down, we're going to start our cream cheese frosting. Really simple. Start by beating together 154 grams of softened unsalted butter. Make sure it's nice and soft but not melted. Beat that together until nice and pale and creamy. Then add in 300 grams of chilled full fat cream cheese. You can use whatever brand you want. Once that's well incorporated, you're going to start to incorporate 350 grams of sifted powdered sugar. Me personally, I would recommend that you add the sugar in 3 separate stages. There are 2 reasons why I do this way. One, I find it's a lot easier to incorporate it, and 2, it's a lot more tidy, makes a lot less mess. But anyways, once you've added the last amount of sugar, you're going to continue to beat it over medium-high speed until everything is well incorporated and you achieve medium firm peaks. Just like this. This is exactly what you're looking for. And just scrape the bottom and sides of the bowl and just beat it again to make sure everything is evenly incorporated. And then beat in approximately 2 teaspoons of vanilla bean paste. That is what I prefer. I like the specks of vanilla throughout, but you can use vanilla extract if you wish. And that's it, that's your cream cheese frosting done. Nice and light and delicious. Now fill up a pint bag 3/4 of the way, don't overfill it, otherwise it'll be a nightmare to pipe, and put in the fridge for like 3 to 4 hours to fill. This is going to make it a lot easier to pipe it onto the cake. And now we're almost ready to assemble. This next step is totally optional. I'm going to carefully trim the tops of the cakes off using a serrated blade, doing a sawing action. Try your best to cut it as even as possible. As you can see, I think I've butchered mine out a bit, but I don't care because it's getting covered. That's the great thing about a layered cake. And now you're probably thinking, what do you do with the trimmings? You throw them away. Absolutely not. Just tightly wrap them in cling film and you're going to put them in the freezer until nice and firm. You can use it later on for decorating. And now we're ready to start decorating the cake. So get a sponge and place it onto the plate that you plan to serve it on, and pipe an even layer of your cream cheese frosting on top and spread it around using an offset spatula so it's nice and evenly distributed. And next is literally just the same as what you just done. So place the sponge on top, top with some more cream cheese frosting, smooth it out using an offset spatula. And now we're ready for the final layer. It's slightly different. I like to flip the sponge upside down so the bottom of the sponge is facing upwards so it's nice and flat, and pipe a nice even layer of your frosting on top. And now using an offset spatula, spread some of that cream cheese frosting from the top of the cake around the outside. But at this stage you don't want it too thick, you just want a nice thin layer around the outside. So it's alright if you can stay straight through it. This is called a crumb coat. And when you're happy with how it looks, you're going to put it in the fridge for a few hours to firm up. And now for this next step, I'm not going to lie to you, a turntable will help you out so much. It does about 80% of the work for you. I'm not even joking. But hold on one second. You can still do it without a turntable, it's just a bit more challenging. So what you want to do here is pipe a nice even layer of the frosting around the outside. Then smooth it out using an offset spatula, which you can buy for pretty cheap, and there's such a useful tool to have in the kitchen. Don't worry if you can't get the icing proper smooth. It's not that type of icing. Just get it as good as possible. And when you're happy with how it looks, pop it back in the fridge to keep it nice and chilled. And now for the decoration. Remember those trimmings that I told you to put in the freezer? This is it. You're just going to get it from the freezer and just finely crumble on the finest setting on a box grater until it's nice and fine. And that's basically it, that's your decoration done. This is such a great way to decorate a cake in my opinion. There's no waste, it's so cheap, and it looks great. And to do it, you're just going to get some of your crumbs in the palm of your hand, compact it into the frosting so it sticks, and just go around the cake until you're happy with how it looks. It's as simple as that. And then once you're happy with how the cake looks, just put the cake back into the fridge for a few hours to firm it up. This is going to make it a lot easier to slice, trust me. And another trick to get a nice clean cut is before every slice, make sure your knife is nice and hot. So simply just run your knife under some boiling water, wipe off the excess, and then slice the cake. And if you do that after every slice, you're going to get a nice clean cut of cake every single time, guaranteed. And there you have it. That's my recipe on how to make a fabulous 3-tiered red velvet cake. This has everything. It has a fantastic flavour and it's super moist. What more can you ask for? Okay, and that is it. That is my recipe on how to make red velvet cake. This is a banger, it's a winner. If you want a great recipe, this is it. If you want to give this a shot, the full recipe is down in the description below with instructions and measurements. If you enjoyed today's video or you learned something, please like and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day. See you next time.